Okay, very good. So today we're doing page 21, and we just finished the last class we did the First World War, and now we're doing Women Get the Vote. Women Get the Vote. So let's see. Now we have to make sure everybody gets a chance to read. Okay, so let's see. I guess Rashid, would you like to do the first part where it says women get the vote on the bottom of page 21?
Okay. Okay. At the time of Confederation, the vote was limited to property owning adult white males. This was common in most democratic countries at the time. The effort by women to achieve the right to vote is known as a women's suffrage
افتح
movement.
الدور.
Its founder is in Canada was Dr. Emily Stowe, the first Canadian woman to practice medicine in Canada in 1916. Manitoba became the first province to grant voting rights to women.
Yeah, very good, very good. Okay, so let's see, let's just go over the ideas here. So some of the questions I might have, it says the women's suffrage, this word here, suffrage movement. What that means is women had to fight to vote, which is very silly because there's more women than men in Canada, but anyways, that's what they did. So women's suffrage movement, the suffrage, that word, that might be a question. And so that means the right to vote, the right to vote. So they can decide who the leaders of Canada are. And then Emily Stowe is another name to try to remember, Emily Stowe. She was the first doctor a female doctor in Canada. So she started the women's suffrage movement. She was Emily Stowe. She was the first to lead it, to help women vote. And then Manitoba was the first province to allow voting for women in Canada in only 1916. Yeah, very good. Okay, so we have to let everybody have a chance to read something today. So let's try. Diala, would you like to do the next part where it says in 1917? Can you do that?
Okay. In 1917, thanks to leadership of women such as Dr. Stowe and other suffragettes, the federal government of Sir Robert Borden gave women the right to vote in federal elections. First to nurses at the battlefront, then to women who were related to men in active wartime service. In 1918, most Canadian female citizens aged 21 and over were granted the right to vote in federal elections. In 1921, Agnes MacPhail, a farmer and a teacher, became the first woman MP due to the work of Zeres, Cass Green, and others. Quebec granted women the vote in 1940.
Yeah, very good. So lots of information there. And then we'll look at some of these pictures. Let's just go back and just make sure we get everything here. Remember we said this Dr. Emily Stowe, she was the first woman doctor, female doctor in Canada. And so in 1917, because of her leadership, all across Canada, women were allowed to vote. So in 1916, it was only Manitoba, and then Dr. Stowe and called the women, the women that were fighting for the vote, they called them suffragettes. So that means suffragettes is the name they gave to women who are fighting to vote. And that's all different countries. In England and every country in the world, they call them suffragettes. And so the first women that were able to vote were nurses who were fighting in the war, in the First World War. And then it went from there. And then in 1918, all females 21 and over were allowed to vote. So it took a while. And then in 1921, let me just go back here. 1918, the first time that all women could vote. And then in 1921, the very first female member of parliament was elected. And this is her picture here. This is her. Yeah, Agnes MacPhail. She was a farmer and a teacher. And she was the very first woman MP in Canada in 1921. So, you know, like 100 years ago, she was the very first Canada to be a female MP. And then it took a long time. So most of Canada, all of Canada could vote in 1919, it said there, didn't it? And then it took 1940 women in Quebec to vote. So that's a long time before they were allowed to vote. Yeah, so all the women had to fight for their right to vote, which is kind of silly, but that's the way it did. That's the way we did it in Canada. And then I just wanted to show you this picture here. You can see this nurse. This is a picture of a nurse in the First World War. And so they were allowed to vote before all the other women because they were fighting in the war. And it says more than 3,000 nurses, nicknamed Bluebirds, served in the Royal Canadian Army Medical Corps, and 2,500 of them overseas. And so these 3,000 nurses were the first female women in Canada that were allowed to vote. Yeah. Okay, so let's think of the names to remember here. So definitely this Dr. Stowe, Emily Stowe, because she fought for the suffragettes. Try to remember her name. And then in 1918, that's a good year to remember. All women, most female Canadian citizens aged 21 and over could vote. So 1918. And then in 1940, women in Quebec could vote. And then 1901, Agnes MacPhail was the first member of parliament. Yeah, so lots of dates there, but I think you'll get the questions. I think the questions will be okay for this one. Okay, so let's try the next page. Go to the next page on page 22. We'll just go up here. I'm gonna go to the side, look at the pictures first. So at the top here on page 22, I'm just gonna move my book over to. It says Canadian soldiers observe Remembrance Day. And then it says Remembrance Day Poppy, this here. And then Canadian War Veteran over here to the right. This man is a Canadian war veteran. And a veteran means somebody who fought for Canada in the war. They call it a war veteran. And then down here, these boys, the Scouts with Remembrance Day wreaths. Yeah, so Remembrance, that's the next thing we're going to talk about. Okay, so let's see, who do you have to get to read now? Let's see, Gonzalo, would you like to do this one here? This Canadians remember the sacrifices?
Okay.
Please.
Okay. Canadian remember the sacrifice of our volunteers and before fallen in all wars up to the present day in which Canadians took part. Canadians were the
Okay, just a second. Oh, sorry, you just missed the line there.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah. It took
Okay.
part.
Each year on November 11,
Remembrance.
Remember Day.
Could you just stop there for a sec? Sorry, Giselle, could you stop there? Because I just want to go slow with this part because they're important. says Canadians remember the sacrifices of our veterans. Does anybody know what the word sacrifice means?
No,
Anybody know that word sacrifice?
this is a new word.
It's a new word. Okay.
Yeah.
Sacrifices means when you give something, but you do something very difficult, or for example, it says sacrifices of our veterans. So that means the men and women who went to war fighting for.
Like your life, right?
Yeah, exactly. They would maybe lose their life. So they sacrificed their life.
Yeah.
Or maybe they lost an arm or a leg. So they sacrificed their arm or leg. Or maybe it was very difficult for them. So it was these are sacrifices. So what they did, they maybe they were living in Canada and they had a good life, but they said we must protect democracy and fight for Canada. And so they put their good life aside, and then they went and fought in the war. So that's a sacrifice. It means to give up something that's good and do something very hard. That's what a sacrifice is. Yeah. So these people sacrificed many things in the wars, and that's what we on November 11th, on Remembrance Day. All Canadians are supposed to remember the sacrifices of the veterans. And it says the brave fallen. Fallen means when you die. So the brave man who fought in the war and died. And so that's what we're supposed to remember on November 11th, on Remembrance Day. Good. Okay, and Gisela, can you keep going? Canadians wear. You see that part there? Canadians wear the red poppy. And you're
Yeah,
muted right
yeah.
now. There you go. Okay.
Yeah. Canadian wear the red bobby and a pulsifer,
Observe.
absorber, mounted of ceiling at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month to honor the
sacrifices
sacrifices of over 1 million before men and women who have served and the 100,000
Okay. 100.
who have given their lives.
Good. Can you stop there, please? Good.
Yeah.
Very good. So we do it on the 11th hour of the 11th. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th. So that's November 11 at 11 o'clock. And what all across Canada, they have a moment of silence. So all across Canada at 11 o'clock on the 11th of November, we try to be quiet and we try to remember the many, over 1 million men and women who fought in wars for Canada, and 110,000 who died fighting for Canada in those wars. Yeah, so it's a very important time for Canadians. And
yeah, teacher, I do that in the work.
you do that at work too?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's very important. And do you know the poppy, wearing the red poppy?
No.
You know, the red flower? Let me just go to the top here, because the next part I'm going to talk about is the poppy.
Okay.
This flower here. Do you see this at the top here?
Yeah.
People wear this. Yeah, they wear that on their coat.
Yeah, I see many people. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you why we do that. I'll tell you why now, because it's a very important thing for Canada, and England does this too. And what it is it's because of a poem. Because of a poem. And I'm just going to read the next part, and then I'm just going to read the poem. We all wear these poppies because of this poem. And so the next part says Canadian Medical Officer Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae. So this gentleman was named John McCrae, and he wrote a poem in 1915. So he was like a doctor, and he was helping all the men who were dying. And when they died, they buried the bodies in this field. And in the field, those flowers grew, those red flowers. And there was I think it was in France or Belgium, fighting in the First World War. So Canadians and other English soldiers died, and they buried them in this field in either France or Belgium. And the field was called Flanders Fields. And so this John McCrae, he was from Guelph, very close to here. And he wrote this poem while he was being a doctor. He wrote this, he was helping these men, and he took a moment and he wrote this poem in 1915. And that's why we all wear red poppies, because of this poem. And I'm just going to read this poem because it kind of sounds nice when when you read it slowly. So this is the poem he wrote in 1915 as a doctor in Belgium. He said, "In Flanders fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields." And then he goes further. He says, "Take up your quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields." Yeah. So it's a very touching poem. And so that's why all Canadians wear poppies, and all people from England wear poppies on November 11th. Yeah. So it was a poem to remember the many men and women who died in wars for Canada. Yeah, and that's Remembrance Day. Remembrance. Okay. So let's see. Maybe I could try to do a few. No, maybe we'll keep reading. I think you'll remember this stuff. I don't think it will be difficult to remember. I hope so. Okay. So let's see. We had Rashida's read, Ghazala has read, Yala has read. Now we need Zaniba. Would you like to read this part, please, Zaniba, where it says between the wars?
Oh, okay. Between wars. After the First World War, the British Empire involved into the free association of the states known as the British Commonwealth of the National, this Canada, remained leading member of the Commonwealth to this day, together with other success or status of the empire, such as the Indian, Australian, New Zealand, and several African and Arabian countries.
Yeah, very good. You can stop there and we'll do some parts. Very good. There were some difficult words there, so that was good. That's very good. Okay.
Association, that's the one I don't know.
Yeah, association. That's it. That's a fun word. Okay, so after the First World War, 1918, the British Empire. So when you say British Empire, that's all the countries that Great Britain conquered, like took over. Like they took over so many countries in the world. They took over India, Australia, New Zealand, many countries in Africa, many countries in the Caribbean, and Canada, of course, they took over Canada. And so that's called an empire. So this one little country, Great Britain, went all over the world and they conquered all these countries. And so after the First World War, just one second, after the First World War, they, I'm just going to get everybody to just mute for a sec because somebody's getting me a bit of feedback there. That would be great. Thank you. Because after the First World War, they didn't have a British Empire. All these countries wanted to be separate from Great Britain. So what they did instead, they called it the British Commonwealth. And so that's what we do now. We have the British Commonwealth. And let me just get this here just a second, please. There we go. Okay, good. And then the British Commonwealth. And there we go. Now, a Commonwealth is just all these countries that used to be controlled by Great Britain, but they're not controlled by Great Britain anymore. They are all like Canada. We became our own country, and all these countries became their own country away from Great Britain. And so, but they were still connected. They still wanted to trade with each other, and they still wanted to help each other. They just didn't want Great Britain telling them what to do. So that is what we have now. We call this the Commonwealth of Nations, the British Commonwealth of Nations. And Canada is a big part of that. We are one of the leaders in the British Commonwealth of Nations. And so all these other countries, India, Australia, New Zealand, many African countries and Caribbean countries, we all work together and help each other in this Commonwealth of Nations. That's sometimes a question on the test. What is the Commonwealth of Nations? What is that? So that's what it is. It's all the countries that used to be controlled by the British Empire. Very good. Okay, we got 2 more paragraphs, and I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to read. Let's see. Manal, I think I muted everybody, so.
No, here, teacher.
Oh, you're there? Good. Okay.
I'm wait to read.
This one, oh, is this on page 22? It says between the wars, and it's this part here where it says the Roaring Twenties.
The Roaring Twenties were bomb times with prosperity for business and low unemployment. The stock market crash of 1929. However, led to the Great Depression.
Yeah, very good. Depression, very good.
Over their 30s, unemployment reached 27% in 1933, and many businesses were wiped out. Farmers in Western Canada were hit hardest by low grain prices and poverty.
A terrible drought. Yeah.
Terrible drought.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop there. There's
Okay.
some important things here. Yeah, very good. Okay, so we finished the First World War, and then everybody came back from the First World War, and then things were doing very well. In the 1920s, it says there were boom times. That means people were making lots of money, businesses were doing very well, and everybody was working. It was all very good. And that lasted about 10 years. And then in 1929, it all went down. And it was the Great Depression in 1929. So the stock market, the market where all the businesses trade, it crashed. That means they lost all their money. And they called it the dirty 30s. So the 20s in Canada, the 1920s were very good, and the 1930s were very difficult times, very difficult, because unemployment was 27%, which is very high, and many businesses were wiped out. That means many businesses went out of business, and then farmers they lost all their money, and then there was a drought. That means there was no rain, so they couldn't grow food anyways. So the 1930s were a very, very difficult time in Canada. Very, very difficult. And they call it the dirty 30s and the Great Depression. Those are the kind of names, questions they might ask, the Great Depression or the dirty 30s. And it started with the stock market crash of 1929. Yeah, very good. Okay, we got 2 more things to read, and then we'll try some questions. There's only 2 pages, but there's a lot of information here. Okay, so let's see. Let's see. I guess we're back to Rashid. Would you like to do this one, Rashid, where it says there was growing demand?
Brian,
Oh,
Brian,
did I get everybody a chance to read?
no, Brian, can I?
Yes.
I need, sorry, I can't, because my daughter, she finished work, I need pick up.
Okay, yeah, no
She,
problem. Yeah, go pick her
I'm
up.
so
And
sorry. I
it's
like it, this story, but I can't.
so Diala, this will be on the YouTube channel in about an hour, this video. So you can watch it anytime you want.
Okay, thank you very much,
Have a
Brian.
good night, Diala.
No, I'm Gazala, not Diala.
Oh, that's because your voices sound exactly the same. You could trick me and I wouldn't know. I'm sorry, Gazelle. Your voices sound
Bye.
exactly the same.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye.
Sorry about that. I couldn't check your voice. Rashid, would you like to read this one? It says there was growing demand. Can you do that part, please? And I think everybody's muted. Is that okay? Is that okay, Rashid? Let me just see. I think everybody's muted. Just 1 second.
I'm here, teacher.
Okay, who's all here? Rashid, we need
Manal.
you to
She's not
unmute.
here. I don't know where.
Manal's here.
I'm
Diala's
here.
here. Zaniba's here.
Diala here.
I'm here.
Okay, Zaniba's here. Very good. And Rashid's here, but he can't hear me. Okay, anyways, Diala, would you like to read this one? There was growing demand. You want to do that one?
Okay. There was growing demand for the government to create a social safety net with minimum wages, a standard work week, and programs such as unemployment insurance. The Bank of Canada, a central bank of manage the money supply and bring stability to the financial system, was created in 1934. Immigration dropped and many refugees were turned away, including Joy trying to flee Nazi Germany in 1939.
Very good, very good. Okay. So we had the 1930s, right? They were very difficult times. Nobody had jobs. Businesses were going under. And so the government had to help because people had no money. They had no food. And so they had minimum wages. So that means you have to pay somebody at least so much an hour, at least so much, a very minimum wage. And then a standard work week. So you only have to work 5 days a week. Some places you had to work 6 or 7 days a week. And then the other thing they did was unemployment insurance. So if you lose your job, the government will help you with money until you find your new job. Yeah. And so, and also the Bank of Canada took over and looked after the money, try to keep things stable. And so it's like what they're doing now, like what the government is doing now. So many people can't work and businesses are in trouble, so the government just. And then the last thing it says in the 1930s, immigration, people coming to Canada dropped. And it was a very sad time for Canada. It was a very bad time. The Canadian leaders were very bad. They weren't good leaders because many people wanted to come to Canada to get away from Nazi Germany and bad places in the world. And Canada said no. And so it's a very bad time for Canada. We were not very proud of this time because people needed our help and we didn't give it to them. And it was very bad. Okay. So that's the ideas of what we're talking about there. So we have lots of ideas today, and I think we'll be okay. Let's try some questions before everybody forgets all these ideas. And let me see it. Rashid, are you still here? Are you there, Rashid? Let me just try. Rashid's muted and I'm gonna ask to unmute you. Okay, anyways, we'll try. Zaniba, would you like to do the first question?
First question. Okay.
Read that.
Okay. What is known as the women suffrage movement? That's is the often by women to end suffering, often by women right vote is the second one.
Yeah, very good. The effort by women to achieve the right to vote. That was the suffrage movement.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. And then let's see. Who wants to do this? Maybe Diallo, would you like to do this one? Can you read it, or maybe if I make it a little smaller?
When were most Canadian female citizens aged 21 and over granted the right to vote in federal election? In 1918.
Very good. 1918. Good. And then let's see. Manal, you want to try this one? I'm going to make it bigger.
Who was the founder of the women's
Suffrage. Remember this one?
The
Name.
two.
Number two?
Immediate store.
Very good, Dr. Emily Stowe. Very good. Very good. And then chance here. Who's next?
Me?
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
When is Remembrance Day? 11th of November.
Okay.
This is easy, Diana.
Yeah, this is easy. This sounds easy. And Rashid, are you here? Are you here, Rashid?
I think I'm
Okay.
still muted.
Yay! We couldn't hear you. I thought you left. Okay. Could you do this one, please, Rashid? I'm gonna make it smaller.
Okay. What is the meaning of the Remembrance Day? Okay. Remember. Number 4. To remember
Very
the
good.
sacrifice
Of Canadians who have served or died in wars up to the present day. Very good. Very good. Good. And now, let's see, this is back to Zaniba, I think, right?
What do Canadians remember on Remembrance Day? Do they doing the sacrifice of the veteran and brave in all wars? Canada victories in the First War. What they doing Canadian is in Canada first Italy. I chose the first one. No, yes, the first one, yes, because sacrifices of the the first answer.
Yeah, the sacrifices of veterans. Yeah,
Yeah.
brave fallen in all war. Yeah, very good. Very good. Okay, and now we're back to Manau. Is that right? I think no.
Okay, teacher. What do Canadians wear in Remembrance Day?
This easy,
First
Manal.
one, teacher. First one.
Yeah,
Easy.
these are easy. I thought they'd be more difficult. These are easy.
Yeah. The teacher
Oh.
gave me easy because I told the Diala is easy.
No, this is for Diala now. She doesn't get an easy one. I don't know if you can. I'm gonna have
What-
to. You read this
Okay.
and I'll move it over for you so you can read.
What was the name of the free associations of states that the British Empire had evolved into after the
Hey,
First
Deka.
World War?
Hey,
Number 2, the British Empire.
yeah.
Okay, so just 1 second. Let's read the question again. So
Okay.
I just accidentally put that there. So what was the
No,
name?
no,
Yeah.
no, number one.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
British, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a British Commonwealth. So the
Okay.
British Empire changed into the British Commonwealth. That's right. Good. Okay.
Hey, Rafa.
And now, who wants this difficult one?
One was.
This is a difficult one, I think. Maybe Rashid, maybe back to you.
Yes.
Okay. When was the Bank of Canada created?
This is in the very last part we read in the book on page 30, 20, the last part.
It is in 1934.
Yeah, very good.
Number one.
Very good, 1934. Good. And then let's see, Zaniba, do you want this one?
Okay. What led to the Great Depression in the 30s? Okay, is the stock market crash of the, oh, this is, I think is the first one.
Yeah, but when was the stock market crash? What
Oh,
year?
crash. When year, okay. Stock market crash is like 19.
Number 3.
20? Okay, give hold. Oh, wait, hold on. The stock market crashing of 2019. Yeah, however, yes.
1929? Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
So number
Very
3.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's all the questions we have. That's not very many questions. Okay, so all the rest of the questions are about the Second World War. And I don't want to go that far because we need a whole lesson to do that. So let me just stop this for a second.